Good day to you guys. The topic for today is the inverse function. The standard is FBF4C. So today we really want to write the inverse function. And in previous classes, we look at the inverse function in terms of the table and in terms of the graph. So the inverse function undoes whatever the function does. So the domain of the function becomes the range of the inverse function, and the range of the function becomes the domain of the inverse function. So we're going to look at a context. I'm just going to do a quick summary of this. Here we have Cumberland Community College offering courses. They charge $80 per credit hour and a registration fee of $10. So number one, we want to write a function to calculate the total tuition cost, including the registration fee, number one. Number two, okay, I have some typo, number two. So number two, we want to calculate the total tuition cost if Ashley took 6 credit hours. Finally, we want to write an inverse function to calculate the number of credit hours. And this is our main objective. Or should I say this is really the objective. But first, we're going to create that function. Okay, so here we're going to use x and y to represent our variables. Y would be our output, and x would be our input. So in this case, the total tuition costs would be your output, and the number of credit hours would be your input. So from algebra 1, we can create this linear function. So it's going to be y equals 80x plus 10. Okay, cool. And number 2, calculate the total tuition cost if Ashley took 6 credit hours. Okay, so it's a function. So I'm going to use notation. I'm going to say F6. So that means what is y when x is 6? Okay, so here is going to be 80 parentheses 6 plus 10. All right, cool. So 80 times 6, that will give me 480 plus 10 give me 490. So F6 is equal to 490. Okay, so I'm going to label 6 as my input and 490 as my output. Okay, now number 3 asks me to write an inverse function to calculate the number of credit hours. So we're going to find this function that would take us from the output to the input. So the function that we created took us from the input to the output. Now we're going the other direction, and that is what is called the inverse. Okay, so first we're going to switch x and y. So where y is, you're going to put x, and where x is, you're going to put y. All right. Then we're going to solve for y because we normally write a function in terms of y. So we're going to minus 10, minus 10. Let me change my color. So it's going to be x minus 10 equals 80y. And then I'm going to solve for y. Divide by 80, divide by 80. And this is how we write the inverse function. F negative 1, that means inverse of x, Okay, so that X, guys, is really your output because we have switched the order. Equals X minus 10 over 80. So the X that we're looking at right now is your output. Because remember, the input and the output are being switched because we're going the other direction. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to substitute the 490, which is the output, becomes the input. So equals 490 minus 10 over 80. 490 minus 10. So 490 minus 10 would give me 480, and divide by 80 would give me 6. So clearly there is an inverse relationship between the function and the inverse function. I hope you guys understand the general concept when it comes to the inverse function. So a function would take us from the input to the output, whereas the inverse function would take us from the output to the input. Thank you, guys.